So the new upgraded Sternguard can certainly shoot pretty hard with a whole bunch of devastating wounds, but what if one of their best roles could be acting as a supporting act for a fighty character, and basically just annihilating one enemy unit with a huge amount of scary shooting and then melee? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I wanted to return to talk Sternguard once more. It really wasn't that long ago since I did a unit review of them just a week or so back, talking about their new upgraded profile with the big rerolls versus Oath and Moment, and mainly focusing on their role as a shooting unit. At the time though, just with the sheer damage numbers that they could put out, it did strike me that another pretty interesting way to use them could be to basically have them as basically a hybrid shooting and then fighting unit, and take them in a small squad with a character, for perhaps some surprisingly savage damage and melee that could potentially do far more than the squad's firepower against the right targets. I won't go over the Sternguard unit profile too much again, but just for a really quite quick roundup, they have a whole bunch of devastating wound fire, often with a bunch of bolt rifles plus a heavy bolter, and then importantly for this video, they get 4 attacks each in close combat with AP 0 damage 1, and then a power fist with 4 attacks at strength 8, AP 2 and damage 2. With that kind of profile, they didn't tend to be enormously exciting at the 90 points that they were before, but they've definitely had a bit more interest added to them when Games Workshop increased the points cost by 10, but also pairing that with a big upgraded rule in Sternguard focus, rerolling wound rolls in full when you're targeting the Oath of Moment targets. That means that both in shooting and in melee, Sternguard will be rerolling the hit roll and then rerolling the wound roll, and then for core codex-based rune chapters, they'll also have a +1 to wound as well. Basically meaning that literally any attack made by the unit is odds on to wound any target in the game, even strength 4 attacks going into Land Raiders weirdly enough. As with a few units in Warhammer 40k, it can be a weird way where the squad can buff the character as much as the character buffs the squad. And just for an example of the amount of carnage they can unleash, let's just put them with a basic Space Marine captain. He can have 5 attacks at strength 8, AP 2, damage 2 with his power fist. And to make him extra good for this particular role, he has his scary finest hour melee buff, adding +3 to the number of attacks that he gets with that power fist, and also getting devastating wounds at the same time, which will be pairing really quite nicely with rerolling all hit rolls, rerolling all wound rolls, and also getting +1 to wound. It means that he's pretty odds on to hit 8 times, and then 3/4 of those will be wounding even against things that are toughness 9 or higher, and a good chunk of those will go straight through the armor save with dev wounds. That's a mean for a minimum size unit of Sternguard plus a Space Marine captain, it'll be 180 points, and then the challenge will be to get them into their target, delivering them in a place where they can both shoot the enemy and then follow up with a charge. Different detachments might be able to get it done in different ways, though I feel like just for a general purpose Space Marine army, maybe the Impulsor could be the best. It's fairly cheap, fairly fast and fairly tough at 80 points for that cost, has enough space for the 5 guys and the captain, can potentially move up into the mid-board to take up a threatening position, and then whenever they decide it's their go turn, they can jump out the front for an extra 3-inch threat range, then move 6 inches, shoot and then go on to charge. It'd be quite a lot more reliable to be able to advance and charge, which could add a fair bit of threat range if it looks like it's a bit tenuous whether or not you might make melee. It does help that the vast majority of the Sternguard bolt rifles are able to advance and shoot. It's just the powerful heavy bolter that wouldn't be able to, but taking the hit on that damage output could be the right thing to do if it does mean that your charge is quite a lot more reliable. If you needed to advance and charge for a stratagem, the captain could do that for free as well. In any case though, for 180 points versus the Oath of Moment targets, their damage does get rather silly. For their range damage, and assuming that you are able to shoot that heavy bolter, they're obviously really good against horde targets, with 13 slain termagants and around about 5 dead Space Marines, but the devastating wounds definitely keep them relevant against all the tough stuff as well. It's around about 3 slain Terminators, 8 wounds to a toughness 10 3+ save vehicle, or 7 wounds to a Land Raider. Certainly a good amount of damage there. In the turn where the captain triggers his +3 attacks and devastating wounds though, they really go next level in melee, and a squad of Sternguard with the captain attached easily do far more damage to basically all targets in close combat. 20 more slain termagants, 10 dead Space Marines, 12 wounds to Terminators, around 15 to a toughness 10 to 12 and 3+ save vehicle, and around 12 wounds to a Land Raider. The majority of those do come from all the power fist attacks, but as mentioned, you still get 16 attacks with the regular guys. They're likely to be hitting almost all of those, and they will be wounding even the toughest stuff most of the time, so even they stack some saves on things like big tough toughness 12 vehicles as well. Then presuming the squad's basically able to shoot and charge against the Oath target with Codex boosted Oath, it does add up to a pretty spectacular amount of damage for 180 points. Most hordes should be absolutely demolished, with an average of 33 dead termagants, even if they've got additional layers of protection of some sort or another. It's around 15 Space Marines, so again, should handle any normal squad of Astartes. around about 7 dead Terminators, 23 wounds to a toughness 10 3+ save vehicle, and that should be pretty similar for toughness 12 as well, or around about 19 wounds to a Land Raider, so in theory one of those dead, and a pretty reasonable chance to one-shot if it uses Armour of Contempt in the fight phase even. Basically just using the enormous damage buff rerolls on a captain means that you can have 180 points worth of units. If you can deliver it in close, it should be able to obliterate most normal units in the game. Even beyond that for this particular combo, it's not like that's even the end of it. You could have enhancements on the captain, maybe things like the Honor Vehement or some other dangerous melee thing, and none of that actually makes use of the captain's free stratagem as well, so you'd have that to throw into the mix, maybe with an advance and charge stratagem or re-rolling failed charges to help you get there. If you needed absolutely every bit of damage and you had nothing better to actually buff him, you could even throw a grenade for a few more mortal wounds. That could be good for an extra Terminator or a few more wounds to a Knight or something. Epic Challenge will be well worth it, as it means that you'll be able to one-shot the vast majority of characters in the game with that Power Fist, or you could just save it for Armour of Contempt for the Strike Back, just to make the squad a little bit more difficult to take down, even if they're still not going to be all that tough. Detachments might be able to give them a little bit more benefits in one way or another as well. Perhaps in Gladius or anything else that could give you extra AP. That stratagem could be well worth it, as certainly in melee one of their slight weaknesses is that there's a bunch of guys hitting at AP 0, so they won't do much against high saves. Even a little bit of AP can transform those. It's not like the Power Fists are super high AP as well. Basically it feels with just the base units they have kind of enormous damage, and if you need to take them next level, other detachments and stratagems might be able to do that even more. I feel like the standard Space Marine Captain might be one of the most simple and obvious ways that you could get loads of damage out of that, just because he's got pretty good melee stats for the cost, and he does get that really big turn where he gets 8 attacks, but there are plenty of others that could either be a little bit cheaper or do other interesting things for the squad. It feels kind of appropriate that Pedro Cantor of the Crimson Fists could absolutely make great use of this. He doesn't get the massive amount of bonus attacks, but he seems to have a fair bit of synergy otherwise. Rather than having 8 attacks with his Power Fist, instead he gets AP 3 and Damage 3, which feels like a fair enough trade-off, particularly against tough things. And on top of that, he can buff the squad with +1 attack when shooting and fighting, both of which are really relevant in this combat, and also work on him. He also has souped up shooting as well, with essentially a heavy bolter type thing, the potential for some other squad damage buffs if they get injured but don't fully die, and now got the buffing rule to allow him to grant extra OC to Sternguard too. So it certainly feels like he'd absolutely slap with his favourite unit. The biggest downside for him is that I believe rules has written you wouldn't be able to declare that Oath of Rin while he's in a transport due to it being a datasheet rule. Admittedly that is a bit annoying and means that you probably want to have him in an advance and charge style detachment and be charging out from behind terrain I suppose. There's loads of other characters that could make a lot of sense as well though. I feel like Chief Librarian Tigerius could absolutely make great use of the big damage buffs of the Sternguard. His psychic shooting is just going to be enormously general purpose with rerolls to hit, rerolls to wound and +1 to wound. You're going to stack loads of damage on anything, and he does have enough melee to also follow up with some pretty powerful close combat as well, if not as much as the Smash Captain. And it could potentially be another interesting guard for Uriel Ventris as well if he's granting something else deep strike. Lots of people tend to use him with company heroes or assault intercessors for a cheapish, toughish unit with some objective control. If you wanted to try and make him into a bit more of a damage dealer though, his hitting power certainly isn't too far behind the captain. He's only strength 6, but he does get 6 attacks at base with sustained hits, so the numbers of attacks are there, but he's just lacking for a little bit of strength. And with the +1 to wound with Oath and 4 wound rerolls, he's still going to be wounding most things most of the time. For Divergent Chapters, they wouldn't be able to get quite as much out of the core combo, seeing as they don't get the +1 to wound on their Oath of Moment targets, but a supporting melee Sternguard unit still might not be all that bad for them. The Blood Angels certainly have their tried and tested Smash Captain, who can take the sustained hits 3, and then basically if you throw him with a unit of assault intercessors against just about any target, he's probably going to demolish them. And it feels like Sternguard veterans could also be pretty reasonable for that role, though you might be pushing them even further into the realm of massive overkill, where you might just not actually need the extra damage quite so much. For a Blood Angel Smash Captain leading the way, he could use Red Rampage for free to get that +1 to wound back, and the Sternguard do cost a bit more than the Assault Intercessors, but do have some advantages as well. They can get their 4 wound rerolls against things that aren't just parked on a mid-board objective, so it could be a little bit more flexible that way. And of course with all their devastating wound bolters, the main advantage of them is that you stack way more damage even before you've started charging, so overall that same combo is going to hit quite a lot harder if it's 25 points and it's the Sternguard with the Captain as opposed to the Assault Intercessors. The main downsides would be that it's an extra 25 points and the unit can already blend a whole bunch of things anyway, so you might just be spending points that you don't really necessarily need to. And also the Sternguard do have a bit less OC as well, and a little bit less AP on the base guys. In general they still look kind of interesting, though I feel like probably the danger is that you're probably getting into overkill more than anything else. In any case though, Sternguard plus character certainly feel like they could be a fun unit, basically a shooting and melee sort of missile that can just wander out, absolutely wreck an oath targets, and leave the rest of your army just free to focus on other things. It is just pretty impressive just how much damage an 180 point unit can do if it gets to shoot and then fight. I guess the main downsides are that you need to actually get in range for both of them, so you will need to deliver them with a transport or similar. On the turn when they want to strike, if they do want to hit with the value that you've paid for, you would need to use Oath of Moment on that target, which is definitely a downside given that will just upscale Space Marine damage wherever it is on the board. It maybe makes them a bit more useful for armies that are going to have more Oath of Moment going around, like say maybe Rebute Gilliman ones. If you're fighting against a big blocky enemy unit, then potentially you could have the risk of cutting down enough models that you actually wind up making your charge a fair bit longer, so you will need to get kind of close or focus on big individual single model units. And then when the enemy comes to strike back, the squad's not really going to be all that durable for 180 points. They're probably not going to find it too hard to take them down unless your unit can find some clever way to do its damage and then stay safe. I feel like this is the sort of one and done combo that probably after it's torn down something that's equal or greater points cost to itself, anything else that it happens to do in game is kind of a bonus really. Certainly seems scary enough from those damage numbers alone though. As mentioned, I do feel like Rebute Gilliman list could really enjoy this. Maybe destroy a different target with Oath shooting with your whole gun line and then switch it to the Sternguard's targets before they come to shoot and then allow them to charge. Or could be quite nice for the extra turn of Oath that you get with the Term of Ectoclades Death Watch. It feels like it could make a Sternguard Death melee missile, perhaps just that little bit more interesting for those, even if they do have a whole bunch of fun close range damage dealers with their kill teams. In any case though, let me know what you think of Big Danger Melee Sternguard. Look forward to hearing your takes down in the comments below. Would you be tempted to use a bunch of veterans with a power fist charging in this way? Or is it better to let the actual melee specialists do their job, rather than the Oath-dependent hybrid Sternguard boys? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, and I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that links down in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep these ones coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.